And whether community ownership is a realistic option, because it's quite a scary thought. You know, the community and the supporters being much more involved in clubs. But what we're going to hear tonight, I think, is other clubs that have deeply dealt with it and have been very positive. The important point really is it's not so much what we think as a TUST, but actually what you think as a group of people and whether it's worth pursuing. So the format for the meeting, we're going to try and finish by 9 o'clock if everybody's comfortable with that. What we'll do is I'll give a bit of background to the meeting and why we're here today. We'll give you, I hope, a good sense of what community ownership is all about. What does it mean and how has it been achieved? And James Mathie from Supporters Direct will be speaking to us about that. Supporters Direct are a community benefit organisation, and their aim in life is to help effectively fans and communities have a greater influence in the way their local clubs are run. And it's quite interesting talking to James, because if you think about how most football clubs actually started, they started in the back room of pubs or in community buildings. They then grew and became businesses, and I guess what happened, we became customers of football clubs rather than actually members of football clubs. I guess where we might have taken this initiative is we go back to actually being the members of the football club rather than the customers of the football club. We've also got Martin Weiler from Exeter City Trust. The Trust have obviously been existent for some time, and we've titled it the Thrills and Spills, because as I said to you before, I think when you sit and think about this, it is fantastically exciting as an opportunity, but as I say, also incredibly scary, and also the responsibility, because we kind of joke, if you get involved in a football club, it's like a puppy. It's not just for Christmas, it's for life if it's going to have long-term sustainability. So it is very important, but it's encouraging that our friends and colleagues up at Exeter are making a go of it, so it can be done. The other issue about community ownership facilities, some of you would have heard about the localism agenda, and Robin Causley, who's the vice chairman of the Trust, also works a lot with community groups. Actually, lots of community groups are looking at sporting facilities or community facilities and running them themselves. They're going to have the same concerns about what a challenge it would be. Okay, we might be talking about different scales, but we know that people have done it, so we're not actually inventing the wheel. We then, I hope, about 45 minutes of presentations, then we're going to have a question and answer session, a discussion, and we really hope that's going to be challenging and stimulating for you. And at the end, perhaps the last 10 minutes, and it is, I stress, an informal vote, but we just want to get a feeling from the meeting in terms of what you've heard, whether you think we've got a potential way forward. There's still a hell of a lot more work to do, but depending on the outcome of that vote, we'll then just quickly explore with you what are likely to be the next steps. So does that sound reasonable as a kind of agenda for this evening? Okay, I'll just quickly give a bit of background to the meeting. Who is TUST? Well, basically, Torquay United Supporters Trust is an organisation of people like us, fans, and the whole purpose of the Trust is to help support the club in its broadest sense. Its birth was, if you remember in the gosh, you all do remember, the Chris Roberts crisis, if I can call it the Chris Roberts crisis, 2006, 2007, roughly. And anyway, the point is that it felt like our club was going to disappear, and the Trust was a response to that. What happened, of course, there was a huge amount of energy at the start, but thankfully the new board came in, clearly had the club at heart, and particularly, obviously, the Bristows with their generosity. I think most of us felt that the club was in very safe hands. And I guess membership whittled away, interest whittled away, because I really thought, nothing to worry about. I think then, about November 2014, Michael was very much involved in the young girls and felt that there was still a role for us, Torquay United Sports Trust, and he decided he was going to try and rejuvenate it, build up its membership. Did that in November, and I think he inherited about 100 members. I think we've now got about 200 members. So he's done a fantastic job in a very short time. But he's also got a crystal ball at home. Because what he wouldn't have realised is what was going to happen in 2015. And if you remember, early in 2015, there were all sorts of rumours going around. The ground was going to be sold. There was going to be a takeover. And then, of course, Thea made her announcements. And clearly, that means there is going to be change in the club. But at the very least, there'll be a change in majority ownership. So the issue for us is we got together as a group of people to try and understand the situation at Torquay, and our perception is, as I said before, there will be change because Thea won't be there after June. Well, in fact, in some respects she's not there now, but she's still there, if you like, behind the scenes. We've got a situation where, as a group of fans, we can either sit there passively and wait to see what happens, and maybe there'll be a group of individuals or one individual with very deep pockets that will ride in and save us. But that's fine if it's like to happen. The issue if that doesn't happen, what are we going to do? And that's really the purpose of the meeting, is to think about those options. Because, and we'll try to talk about it in perhaps a little bit, there is a degree of urgency to finding a solution. So what have we done in terms of responding to the challenge? When was Thea's announcement, first announcement? 5 weeks ago? Something like that, wasn't it? Well, it's been a mad rush in the last 5 weeks. And to be honest, as we started to think about the options, we got involved in a lot of conversations, a hell of a lot of conversations. And so we started to talk to senior people at the club, including Kelvin Thomas, who I have to say was incredibly positive to the principle. Didn't shy away from the fact of saying it's a big challenge, but he was very positive about some of the ideas. I have to say, particularly thank you to Simon and Bill, who have also been very supportive of us, and Simon's met me on a couple of occasions, so that's been really helpful. We've talked to colleague fans, we've talked very much the supporters directive, if you like, fired up around our enthusiasm. We've talked to other clubs which have trust, most recently Kidderminster, who obviously were down recently. It's probably the last time we won, actually. But yes, we did talk about, we've talked to other trusts, we talked to the media. So we've really just tried to talk to anybody and get as much information as we possibly can. And not only that, because there was the rumour of the ground perhaps being sold, there was some work to get the ground registered as an asset of community value. It basically does mean that as a trust, if the ground is to be sold, we will be notified. And it does mean, if the community wants to respond to that, that we could also bid for that ground against other people who might wish to purchase it. So a lot's happened in that very short time. The important point about the TUST, though, is our overriding objective is about the long-term sustainability of the club. And I guess it's quite fitting that we're in the museum, because but not only that, the museum has got its exhibition, which I want to plug, celebrating, what is it, 100 years? 125, thank you. I'm a newbie, I've only been here 15 years, so yeah, celebrate 125. The issue I think we've got to think about is the next 125 years. That's what it's all about. And so, from our perspective, as I say, our guiding principle is we'll always try and do what's best in the club, because ultimately all we are as fans. We don't have any particular power trip about we must be involved in this. It's got to be in the interest of the club. And it really is about collectively deciding what is the best way forward to the club. One of the things I said about urgency is you learn a lot. Well, of course, it's obvious if you think about it. The reason there needs to be a bit of clarity about the way forward is, of course, the current management and the team manager is looking at the player budgets for next year. How much is it going to be? Who knows? And clearly, unless we get something sorted out to ensure that there is some clarity about 15, 16, that will create some major challenges. So it is urgent that we agree on whatever our best way forward is. Just before I hand over to James, Just one other point, and it's an obvious point, and I made that easy quip about getting this again, but clearly we're not going to be talking about stuff on the pitch at all tonight. This is all about off the pitch and about the long-term future of the club and what's in the interest of the club. So I will have a really good and stimulating session.
Okay, thank you, Alan, and thanks to everyone for coming out tonight and having me down here. Actually, the first time I've met Michael, and it's a bit strange coming in because we must have shared about 1,000 emails, and it was like a strange internet date for the first time. But just to echo what Alan said, it's amazing how much activity there's been really in the last couple of months, and the people that Michael's brought in to seek opinion and to look at some of the options really, and that's really why we're involved. So as much as I would like to just preach the fact that support ownership is the best model, that's not really how it works, and that would be a waste of everyone's time. What I'm here to do is talk a little bit about Supporters Direct, talk a little bit about some of the clubs that have gone down this route, but it's more so that you can feel more well versed, I suppose, in what the pros and cons are, and ultimately, if this is going to be the way forward, there's obviously a long way to go, but ultimately it needs to be something that the supporters, the majority of supporters, the majority of the community gets behind. It will not work if we present ownership to the community. It has to be something that people actually want, believe in, and will put time and effort in to make it work. And that's where there are some potential benefits in the model. It's not a case of just sitting back and letting Michael ping off another 1,000 emails. That's not going to work. That's not going to sustain the club. It's not going to sustain Michael, I don't think. So I'll just give a little bit of background about Sports Direct. It looks a really busy slide, even on the massive screen. So I'll just pick out a few points. So we were set up in 1999. Originally, it wasn't about ownership of clubs. It was really, we were inspired by a guy called Brian Lomax. A few of you may have heard of him, but he was involved in Northampton Town. Club was in crisis. He galvanised the community and supporters together and raised some money. But rather than just kind of handing it over to the club, said, look, we want to be involved in the club moving forward. It's not good enough for us just to raise the money and say, okay, you guys crack on and run the club. A, we've raised the money, and B, actually, if we're involved and consulted and engaged in some of the decision making, the club's going to be better for it. So he was our first chair and really inspired Supporters Direct and the Supporters Trust. So this was before my time. I've been at ST for about 7-8 years, so not quite my testimonial yet, but I've been around long enough. And what happened at the start was, I think it was a pilot really, just to see how many of these Supporters Trusts would work. And very quickly the numbers were flying, and a lot of that was down to crisis, similar really to how the TUST was set up. So there's, a lot of clubs were getting into financial difficulty, and we had things like the ITV digital affair. Supporters were rallying round to do their best to make sure that the club survived and thrived. Very quickly the numbers grew, and now they're closing in on 200 supporters trusts, mainly in English football, but also Scottish football and into some of the other sports as well. Collectively, there's 750,000 members of those, and they've raised a lot of money over the time, and increasingly so in the last few years, and I'll touch on kind of why that is, but over 40 million and counting really. We, because of the work that's gone on and other countries looking on, obviously impressed UEFA, and UEFA funded some positions for us to work across Europe, and there's similar supporters organisations and networks that are setting up mainly across Europe. But what's perhaps most relevant really to tonight's discussion is, over those 15 years or so that we've been around, where some of the clubs were going bust and starting from the bottom of the pyramid, or where some of the clubs were being taken over by supporters, sometimes just in a temporary measure. So think of York Cities and Chesterfields, and perhaps infamously Notts County and Stockport County, some of the clubs, at least temporarily, or even remaining as an Exeter city, suddenly actually became the owners of the club. And sometimes it was owners of last resort, but some of these clubs are still doing a fantastic job today as supporter-owned. And what happened, particularly in the last probably 5 years or so, is I think more clubs, particularly when the clubs were coming up through the leagues, were getting inspired and looking at this model and thinking, okay, actually, is this a model that could help our club out of choice rather than out of crisis? And going back to Alan's point at the start about how football has evolved from these working clubs and members clubs and you know, where actually the community did own the club, but there's a growing kind of interest and a wave of clubs that are looking at this model out of choice. And it's very difficult, you know, the issue obviously is that they're competing against clubs where the whole leagues are set up to help benefactors, and clubs that lose the most money and pay the most wages often are the most successful. So it's not helped by the system, the way the league is set up. But there's still enough advantage and benefit that clubs like Exeter are remaining competitive and still being successful, whereas the community-owned club without an obvious benefactor. Just to quote the finance director at Wrexham, a club that I'll mention a bit more later, but was privileged to work with those guys quite a lot when they took over the club. He said, you know, when he's asked about who funds the club, he says, well, we don't have a benefactor, we have 4,000, and you know, their membership is 4,000 members strong, and they're all part owners of the club, and that's how they perceive their club. And for them, you know, it actually is a difficult decision if someone just turned up at the racecourse with a massive sack of cash to say, well, actually, you know, because of the way our club is set up now, and the way it's organised, and all the extra partnerships and sponsorships and relationships we've got, just giving us a load of money might not actually be the best thing. And you know, it's certainly a big decision for us to concede any influence in the ownership of our club. It's not a simple decision. So that to me is testament to kind of how the model has developed, even in the 15 years of ST, where perhaps at the start it was just seen maybe as a sticking plaster for some of the clubs that went bust, and it was about just keeping them playing. So just very quickly, so we're on the same page. This community is a word that gets bandied around all over the place. So when we SD talk about a community-owned club, we mean that a minimum of 50% of the shares, or effective control of 50% plus one of the shares is owned and held by an open, inclusive membership body. Membership works on a one member, one vote basis. Any profits that are made are reinvested back into the club as opposed to being distributed to shareholders. Not many clubs make money these days, unless you're an Arsenal shareholder, you're not likely to get a dividend, so we think actually it's the right legal close for a lot of football clubs. And, you know, importantly, the club is committed to running as a sustainable business. You know, whilst it is frustrating to see some clubs with the kind of boom or bust culture and the short-term ownership of some of them, and how the strategy is to chase the money at the top. That's not obviously what this is about. This is about trying to build firm foundations and working our way up so that the club sustains itself, so it doesn't shoot back down the league just as quickly as it went up. So this slide is really to show the diverse range of clubs that we've worked with that are in community ownership. And really from a whole variety of different backgrounds. So, you know, the Football League, there's 4 clubs at the moment, Portsmouth, AFC Wimbledon, Exeter City and Wycombe Wanderers. All got their own stories to tell, all came about in slightly different fashions and different shareholder relationships and things go on, but they all fit the definition for us. Interconference Premier, there's Chester, there's Wrexham, and well, technically AFC Telford United, but yeah, next season obviously we start the Conference North. But then there's a whole range of clubs further down the pyramid that are structured in the same way and actually share an almost identical constitution. For a club like Congleton Town, their constitution is very similar to Exeter City or Portsmouth. So for us, as I say, it's a model that's getting a lot more interest, particularly in football, but across other sports. Yeah, this is really just to show that there's all sorts of clubs out there. And of course, whilst I say some of the work Support Us Direct and the Trust has done has inspired some of the European countries, of course, some of the European countries are streets ahead in terms of the way their member-owned clubs run. Anyone who follows German football and Swedish football and beyond. So, in many respects, you know, we're copying and working our journey towards those. So let's flip through these. So this is in actual kind of practice how a community-owned club works. So, as I said, membership's open, people who support the objects of the club. It's 1 member, 1 vote for members. Membership is renewed annually, which is important for us. I mean, we see so many football clubs in particular with massive long lists of shareholders. In fact, Torquay's very similar, where you know, people have come forward, bought shares for whatever reason, absolutely the right reason at the time, and then, to be honest, a lot of these shareholders probably don't even, sadly, might have passed away or might not even know that they own the shares anymore. What we really want to get is a group of shareholders that renew annually, that are participating and active in the club, because in a funny sort of way, a long list of shareholders that aren't active can actually hold back the club in different aspects, particularly when you're trying to raise finance and make some change in the constitution. So that's the way it works. They're able to raise money in a cost-effective way. We'll talk about that in a second, looking at community shares really. And able to raise money without changing the 1 member, 1 vote dynamic. Again, that's where a lot of the clubs that started out as members clubs 100 odd years ago, and when they needed to raise capital to fund facilities and things, that's when a lot of the makeup of these clubs changed, because they needed to raise the money, and suddenly people started owning more shares than others, and really the whole, sometimes positively but sometimes negatively, the whole dynamic of the club changed. People didn't feel that collective responsibility for the club, because why would they if someone's got loads of money and they're willing to put it in? So our model is set up to be flexible to that, but it absolutely sticks to the core of 1 member, 1 vote. But they don't all make decisions. I'm sure you guys probably know this from looking at some of the clubs, so we're not talking about Ipswich here. Believe me, you know, what we want is an engaged membership that consulted on big decisions, and there'll be places for the governing board each year, and hopefully a contested election and a lot of interest in those board places. But again, you know, it's not just trying not to have a committee of 12, 20 odd people making every last decision and meddling in all the football decisions that get us so excited. We still want there to be delegated authority from that governing board, if you follow, for people either in paid or voluntary capacities that make decisions on certain aspects of the running of the club, the day-to-day running of the club. This point here. But you know, there are still within the constitution ways that the members can rise up and question and have influence in what is going on at the club. You know, it's not simply a case of have the election each year, crack on, run the club, see you in a year's time. You know, because we need, you know, if there isn't a benefactor, we need lots of people that are engaged and willing to put time and effort in and that trust and feel engaged with what's going on in decision making. There's nothing worse than people making decisions about your club that you disagree with and you can do nothing about. So we don't want that, obviously. And there's a few protections that can go in there with assets as well, which may or may not be relevant. You know, what it doesn't do, I won't lie, is you know, it can still be a mismanaged club. You know, it doesn't stop that. But what it does, hopefully, is there's more eyes and members and engaged people understanding what is going on with the club, particularly the budget and you know, facilities and these kind of big strategic things that are important as the future of the club. And as I said before, it's basically, again, for us, it's a legal structure that actually reflects what a club is and helps its profile. So, you know, a private company is where a lot of clubs are, and that works for some, but you know, private companies were set up to make individuals profit and wealth, and you know, there aren't that many people certainly this level of football that are using a football club to do that. So, you know, there's loads of people that care passionately about the club. Everyone in here could make a case that they probably love their club as much as the next person, so why shouldn't everyone part own the club? And that collective responsibility, rather than just giving it to someone to crack on and run, is really going to be the core strength if this is going to work. So, potential benefits, again, I'm not saying that, you know, there are bad examples of where, you know, this model hasn't worked or there's missed opportunities, but these are possible benefits where some of the clubs have used the model to their advantage. So that transparency, openness and trust is definitely something that you've got a head start on some of the other models of ownership. You know, there shouldn't really be a better connection if you part own the club. You know, there's some very well run clubs, but you know, it's still very hard to change that relationship of feeling like you're a customer in a big business as opposed to a part owner. So we found that some companies are more up for and willing to sponsor a club that is owned by the community. It's another thing to sell. It's sometimes, in a strange way, businesses and people don't feel like they can put the money into a club if there's certain individuals that are involved. And again, it's the model of ownership that they can go to seniors and people and say, you know, we're not just sponsoring a private company here, we're sponsoring a community organisation, and that is potential benefit. That's why AFC Telford United got a sponsorship deal which ran until 2017 with a local organisation there. So every year they know that in their budget they've got that money going in, and that makes a huge difference, obviously, when you're budgeting and putting your cash flows together. So sharing the expectation, the burden of running the club. I mean, I'm sure this will come up, and I should say that the Q&A is often where all this really happens, so bear with us with the slides. But, you know, and no doubt there'll be questions about, you know, are we just talking about withering into Conference South now with our budget and whatever? You know, this is about basically the club being as successful as the community willing to support it, really. It sounds a bit throwaway, cheesy line, but that's the truth. Some of the clubs have fared well, particularly Conference Premier League 2 and below. You know, and really just as likely to have a good season as a bad season, would be our opinion. You know, if we're talking about a club moving into the Championship, it gets a bit more difficult because the club in the Championship's losing 10 million plus a year, and that's a lot of push for an ownership model. But in League Two, the average club loses £500,000 a year, and I think that's definitely doable. And you've got the likes of AFC Wimbledon in there now, who are playing at a facility that's probably the worst or second worst in their league, and they're still competitive. Okay, where were we? So we've done some of these already. The opening up to finance to help develop facilities, might be something that's relevant here. This was really why Michael got in touch with me to start with. Clearly, I understand the facilities are really good at Plainmoor, but if we're going to be reliant on the business model and getting more income into the club, we've got to find a way to make the best use of the facilities and assets that we've got. And from some of the clubs that we've worked with, they've been able to leverage the community ownership model, use community shares as a way to raise finance, bring in other partners that are willing to put money in. We can touch on that a bit later, just for any time. And hopefully it will encourage more volunteering and participation from the community. We've just done a study looking at 5 different community clubs, and they value the volunteer hours that they have each year at about £125,000, just based on the minimum wage, about how much time those clubs benefit from volunteers, one of which is Exeter, Telford United were in the study, Lewis, FC United and Huntsville Hawks. So they took an average and they worked it out at £125,000 a year, which is pretty awesome. Moving on, this slide might be one to come back to really. So again, just want to be clear that whilst I've talked a lot about the model and what the benefits are, it's not to say that it's not a long way to go, and it starts really to work out the appetite, and that's here. But I just wanted to show a slide which might help with kind of the way things might move forward if all goes well. I mean, is it best to maybe come back to it at the end?
Yeah, maybe when we get to the vote, we could almost find that slide again.
Let's do that.
It's for people, I think.
Let's do that. And that's it, we're talking any longer. So, thank you very much. And as I said, the Q&A, I expect hopefully there'll be a lot of questions and we can get into some of the examples in detail.
Yeah, that was great. So what James has done. So I hope what James has done is very helpful, if you like, painted the theory of how it works. Now we're going to get from Martin what it's really like when you're actually in the middle of it, in the muck and bullets.
We haven't talked this, but you are going to back up.
Yeah, this is not rehearsed, so it could go horribly wrong now. Good evening, everyone, and heartfelt greetings from Exeter City Football Club and its owners, Exeter City Supporters Trust, and our 3,000 plus members. I think one of the things that we learn, and I'm sure you're going to learn, I'm sure every club that James has mentioned, is every club is different. Every club itself is different, the context you start to think about having a trust is different, and every trust is different. So to me, the biggest lesson we had is we had to be ourselves, who we were, and deal with our situation. And our situation was incredibly different from yours. We literally had criminals who had taken over the ownership and the running of our club. And the chairman went to prison, the club was bust, it was do or die. And the people of Exeter said, we want to save our football club, and built the trust, bought the club. But I think however much there are those differences in your situations, actually there's a hell of a lot in common. And some of the strands James has already covered. But we've now owned our club for 12 years, so I think we've got some lessons from that experience that we can share with you that I think would be common for you and are probably common across the trust movement. And I think at the simplest, it almost sounds trite to a certain extent, but at its simplest, the most energising thing of all is that if you take over the ownership of your club, you, the fans, actually do own your football club. And it's amazing what flows from that. Because I think it's transformational. It certainly was transformational for us. It transformed the way the fans engaged with the club. Because there's this outpouring of love for the club, of pride for the club, and people start doing things. James talked about the democracy of it all, because it does bring democracy to your football club. One member, one vote, the fans decide. I think the point that was just made about volunteering is a massive one. It's been massive at Exeter, because when we took over our club, we didn't have any money to pay hardly any staff. But the outpouring of offers by people who said, well, if I own the club, I want to help it. And the volunteering that goes on is just staggering, and I just don't think you get that in a situation where you've got a different ownership model. You also suddenly find that you've got fans everywhere, because if you go to a membership model and say, come and join our trust, we're actually going to own this football club, suddenly we were getting contacted by Exeter City fans all over the world saying, I want to join. We have a basic membership model where our membership is very cheap, we've never put it up, so it's a minimum £2 a month, but many people pay a lot more than that, and some people working abroad have done very well in life and are very generous. So suddenly you start opening up the money to people that may not have been to a match for years, but they still love your football club. And we found that many of our members don't actually live locally. They've got connections with the club, they want to support it. A lot of our members don't even support football particularly, but they like the model, they like the ethics, they like the idea of a cooperative organisation, and they're willing to support it in the way that you might support the National Trust or something like that. They really want to support it. I think it opens up so many different ways that you can actually engage fans in your own football club. One of the simplest things we do is that every match we do a draw among the entire membership of the trust, and the winner becomes the director for the day and brings a guest and goes into the boardroom. And that's been going for 12 years now, so a lot of our members have started to be director for the days. But people love it. The experience that people get from doing things like that, and we do lots of other money can't buy things because we own the football club. We can actually say, we want this to happen, we want this to happen, and it happens. I think the point that you just made, James, I can really speak from our experience about opening the doors in the local community, the business sector, the public sector, the media. All of those are actually really interested in a kind of social enterprise, which in effect a supporters trust is owning the football club, not for profit, but for the club itself. That is very, very popular. And for example, we're members of something called Essence, which is the organisation of social enterprises in Exeter, which is part of the Chamber of Commerce. So suddenly you have this complete entry into loads of other businesses like yourselves who want to work with other social enterprises, and through the Chamber of Commerce to the wider business community. And people keep coming to us saying we'd like to work with you. Only last week I was at a workshop of all those businesses held at the football club. So they paid to use our facilities because they like the idea of using the football club. So I think it does open a lot of doors. And I think again, as James said, you're not alone in this, and one of the things we've always felt is we're part of a movement. We were in at the early part of it, and we've seen it grow and grow and grow. But you're not alone. You've got people from all the football clubs that have got trusts, from the clubs that are owned, that are willing to support you, and of course we've got Supporters Direct as well. I think, just summarising some of the big things I think it's given us as a club stability. There's no doubt that having fan ownership, that there's going to be ups and downs, certainly on the pitch, but in terms of the actual core business, it gives you stability. And that's a rare thing in football. We've had, since we took over the ownership club, we've had the same sponsor for that entire period. They like what they get. We obviously like having a major local company supporting us. So it's not just something that's kind of a model that fans decide on that's kind of inward looking. But this brings external benefits. I think the other thing is long term, not short term. So we feel we can start making long term plans for the football club because we're the owners. We know we're going to be the owners. We're not people interested in selling off the stadium, making a fast buck, getting out, whatever. We're in it for the long haul. So I think that long term thing is really important. It's not just about the first team. It is about the first team, and that's critically important, but it's not just about the first team. It's about the women's team, it's about the disabled team, it's about the heritage of the football club. All sorts of things that we say we want our club to invest in those as part of what we're all about. So that all sounds very good, doesn't it? But what are some of the challenges? Because I think you've got to be honest about this. There are challenges. Now, I guess the number one challenge is all about money. And how much money you can bring to the football club versus other models that are available. All I can say is that, I think it refers to what I said earlier, you'd be amazed how many fans you've got, and you'd be amazed how generous they are. And it's certainly better than having no football club, and it's certainly better than having a football club that's going off the rails. But it's really down to any football club and its supported and community base to see how much money they can raise. But people are very generous. Just before Christmas, we did our usual and got knocked out in the first round of the FA Cup. And so we had a spare Saturday. And we decided to bring forward a Tuesday night game, because Tuesday night crowds are pretty low. So we decided to bring forward a Tuesday night game to just before Christmas. And then we suddenly realised we didn't have any sponsors or anything for the game, and it was about 2 weeks to go. So we said, why don't we do a fan sponsorship? And it was unbelievable. I think we got in about 4 times the money that a normal match sponsor would have given us. And fans and we just said, give us a £5 each. People were queuing up to give it. And again, we did draws, so that throughout the day, people were either at the pitch with the referees, having their pictures taken in the boardroom, having pre-match sponsorship, and they were all, done from the draw. But we raised thousands of pounds just before Christmas as well. So I think people do respond. I think there are challenges around ethics. I mean, this is a very ethical, proper model in a world where a lot of your rivals aren't playing by the same rules. And that can be really challenging, and you have to dig deep to say we're going to keep going, believe what we do, even when it gets rocky. And you have to do that in a world where a lot of fans are quite short term. If you've lost on Saturday, the end of the world. I mean, we lost at Plymouth about 2 months ago, and the fans were saying, sack their manager. We've been unbeaten since then. I mean, if we just knee-jerked immediately, then, and now people saying, oh, he's wonderful, football fans are very short term. But having this kind of trust structure gives you just a bit of time to just take a slightly longer term view. That doesn't mean you don't sack managers if you're a trust-owned club. It doesn't mean you have to make tough decisions, but you don't have to be so short-term and knee-jerk about it. But it is a pressure if you've got a trust-owned club that sometimes people are impatient. I think there's also a tension between what we always say is we own our club, we don't run it. We own our club and we employ people to run it, and they've got to be allowed to get on. Well, a lot of fans find that a bit frustrating at times. Why don't you tell them to do this? Why don't you tell them to do that? And you know, we have to say, no, we've given them their objectives, you know, we've got to let them breathe, we've got to let them make mistakes, because that's how they'll learn. But, you know, there are tensions around that. But we're still going 12 years on from first owning it. I think you just live through them, you learn from them. I think the other thing that you have to be honest about is this can be hard work. It's particularly hard work for the wonderful people that you've got here who've organised your trust and organised this meeting. But year in, year out, that's tiring. And I think a lot of trusts face difficulties with burnout. I know we have, where people, you know, they just got tired. And so the real challenge is having the people coming up behind. So, for example, this year we've just recruited an 18-year-old onto our trust board, because we need to get some young blood, we need to get different viewpoints coming in, and so you have to keep doing it. But that is a problem. But I think in summary, if you ask me, would I like to go back to where we were? Would I like to go, like to have another model despite all those challenges and difficulties? I'd say no way. I think all those problems can be overcome. People are brilliant. Fans don't walk away from football clubs. You've got them, and they really do put an awful lot in. So, I mean, all I can say from us all at Exeter is good luck with whatever you decide. I brought, when we had our 10 years of owning our club, we produced a brochure. So I brought a few of those if you'd like to read through. It's got articles about what we've done over the 10 years. So do take those away. But whatever you decide, certainly we'll be there to support you all the way. So very happy, whatever support you need from us, we'll be very willing to give it. So good luck, everyone.
I don't know about you, but that for me was really inspiring. And I think what is fantastic, because you know, I have sleepless nights about whether this is really realistic. Is it a pipe dream? But it's fantastic to actually turn that pipe dream into reality. And I guess the other interesting issue is, you know, when there's a crisis, everybody rallies around. I get, my view is, we're not in crisis, but what we are is in a period of change. And if you think about all the challenges you have to deal with the crisis, we haven't got that. We've got a really good chance, because the club, the infrastructure, walk around the stadium, Seal Hay, it's all looking good. So it's not that we're dealing with a crisis. And I don't think, Simon, you're not going to prison like Exeter City Church. So we're not dealing with that sort of crisis. I mean, I guess if I was, you know, for me, the thing about that was mindset. You can have a mindset that says, this is difficult, and it is. Or you can have a mindset that says, what does it take? What do we do to make this happen? And I think that's what I really got from you. So for me, that was fantastic. Robin's also going to say it's not just Exeter, but actually loads of community groups are now wrestling with this issue and starting to make real changes. So Robin will give us some examples about what's happening in Torbay.
Thanks so much. Good evening, everybody. First thing to say is that we haven't yet had time to develop a community vision. This will take some time. And how could we? 6 of us sitting in a darkened room developing a vision for community, and when we haven't been out there talking to community, it'd be a nonsense. So we've got a huge amount of work to get out there and about, talking to people of all ages, all parts of Torbay and beyond. Let's not forget the wider South Devon area, and of course our wider community of exiles that support the club. We need to do a lot of talking, and to develop a proper strategy for the future, there's an awful lot of work to be done. So for a certain extent, these views are from a personal perspective, and I work for a community development organisation, a trust, hasn't long been established, but works with voluntary community and social enterprise groups across Torbay. Some of these are normal registered charities, some of these are community groups, some are social enterprise, community interest companies, and a growing number now moving into various sorts of cooperatives. So we are seeing a huge growth in interest in changing the ways that organisations are running in Torbay. So what actually would that mean in reality? How could TUST ensure that a community benefits from having a professional football club in its midst? How can we widen our appeal and become, if we become a community young club, how can we get the community to support us? I think it's sometimes said that Torbay lacks a sense of community and identity, and the kind of transient nature of its population, with younger people moving out, unfortunately, and older people moving in, works against any real sense of community. I don't think that's true. I really don't think that's true. It's not my experience. Torbay is beset by many problems. Several of the wards are in the top 20% most deprived in the country. One ward's in the top 10%, with another very close to being so. We all know the problems that exist. The major problems of child poverty, pensioner poverty, high numbers of people on benefits, and even those in work, of course. Many of those are on struggling on low incomes. We have some of the highest, the worst rates of in-work poverty in the Bay. So, there are problems out there. There are huge problems in the community. High levels of debt, above average figures of those, say, on alcohol, drug dependency, a whole lot of other problems. But a day like today, you can almost forget those. It's a wonderful place to live, a wonderful place to work, and it's got so much going for it. And I think we have to remember and feel very privileged to live in the area that we do. But I think amongst the community, I sense a real determination to do something about all the problems that I've talked about. Communities taking ownership of problems, particularly in the times that we're facing now. Just coming out perhaps a little bit of austerity, but we've got huge numbers of cuts that we've had to face, both in local government and in public services, and we're having to respond to those in different ways. I think there's a real willingness amongst agencies to work in partnership, to collaborate, and particularly amongst the voluntary and community sector, to look at different ways of doing things, operating in a different way, and taking charge of their communities, doing things for themselves rather than being done to. Somebody parachuting in with some ideas and some money doesn't always work. Often it's better. The assets of any community are its people, and often it's that leadership will come from within. So it's against this background then of austerity and huge cuts to local government funding, but we are looking at ways to tackle problems, and we're working, my organisation, and working with statutory agencies and voluntary agencies to help turn things around. And Torbay does have a vibrant and diverse voluntary and community sector, and we've got nearly over 600 groups operating in the Bay. From very small self-help groups of 3 or 4 volunteers, and up to some very big organisations who've got very big responsibilities. Torbay Coast and Countryside Trust, for instance, we are the guardians and custodians of our green belt and our coastal areas. Every ward has a community partnership working to ensure the views and aspirations of local residents are listened to and acted upon. There's a huge army of volunteers. We talked about volunteers and the importance they can be in a community-run club. There's a huge army of volunteers existing in the Bay, wanting to assist and help some of those people we talked about in need, to improve and maintain the local area or green space, or to raise money for a local good cause, or run an event in the community. All sorts of things going on every day of the year, which are led by volunteers. Take a couple of examples. Torbay Hospital League of Friends raises millions of pounds to buy equipment for Torbay Hospital and other local hospitals, and for other capital developments of the club. One of the best hospitals in the country, I think you'd agree. Only the Friends of Great Ormond Street in London Hospital raised more money than our Friends group. That's hundreds and hundreds of people in the Bay mobilising to raise funds for the benefit of a hospital. Another example, Rowcliffe Hospice mobilises hundreds of people every year to take part in its events, raising money in a fun way, going out and on their sleepwalk, raising hundreds of thousands of pounds to sustain the hospice and its services in the community, provide such a vital job. So what's all this got to do with a football club, you might say? And you can't compare the work of such charities to the work of Torquay United Football Club, you might think. Well, a football club can command a place in the community, and it needs to connect with its community. And I think maybe we've lost our way in that, to a certain extent. I think the club no longer, people don't feel the same pride of the club as they used to, and I think we need to reconnect. Whether that's through watching, volunteering or participating as a volunteer, I think we need to create that sense of identity of the club that we've lost. And by becoming a community-owned club, Torquay United will need to work together with a range of organisations and develop partnerships with schools, colleges, charities, volunteer groups and the wider sporting community here especially. The club has got decent facilities that we talked about, Playmore, and they could become a focal point of the local community, opening their doors most days and evenings a week to local groups for youth work, adult education, holiday programmes for children, play schemes, activities for vulnerable people and so on. I was amazed at the amount of activity that FC Manchester were undertaking in a relatively short space of time. What they've developed, obviously Manchester can't be compared to Torbay, but Torbay does have many of the inner city problems that are being experienced at the likes of Manchester. And there's a whole range of community initiatives going on up in Manchester, and they've really connected with their community. And they're gaining from that, undoubtedly gaining, not just through money through the turnstiles, but also in terms of development of a new ground and new facilities. And they've done an absolutely wonderful job there in terms of their community engagement. The club already works closely with Western School, and perhaps we could work more with a swimming pool. We've got a swimming pool right opposite Playmore, a matter of yards from the ground, which itself has struggled for funding in recent years. But it's very keen to engage with the local community and open its facilities, not just for swimming, but to a wider community as well. And we've been helping, my organisation has been helping them with that, and they've been successful in getting funding to develop community initiatives. So constant use of facilities at Playmore, for instance, will bring in a regular income stream, hire from rental of rooms, possibly the provision of food and refreshments on a more regular basis. I'm sure we're doing some great work up there, entertainment-wise, and we've got good facilities. Let's make the most of them and maximise them for community benefit in the future. Where groups need funding to run and develop their activities, grants could be sought in partnership or collaboration with TUST. In terms of finance, this forms model, the Community Benefit Society, opens up a whole range of funding possibilities, which we as a club now, the privately run club, cannot access. Funders like community benefit societies because they spread the risk really, and it shows that you've got support for your members and members of the community. And a CBS structure provides a means to raise capital and to becoming increasingly popular with key funders who like that community buy-in. So I think in the future there'll be even more opportunities. There are significant amounts of funding to be tapped into with the likes of a big lottery, Children in Need, Sport England, etc., all keen to invest more money in Torbay. And a number of times I've spoken to the funders and they say, well, people aren't applying, they're not putting bids in, and it's so frustrating as a funding advisor, but people aren't doing it. There's money waiting to come into Torbay, believe you and me. Last year my organisation, Torbay Community Development Trust, raised not far short of £7 million, just short of £7 million funding for projects to run ourselves or on behalf of other voluntary community and social enterprise organisations. That's an exceptional year. We won't be able to do that every year. It just shows the huge potential out there for grant funding for the benefit of our communities. New jobs have been created along with many more volunteering opportunities, and above all, existing or new projects and services are being given a chance to find new ways of doing things, and we're seeing the benefit of that in our communities as we speak. As well as playing or becoming a community hub, if you call it that, we could also look at developing outreach activities, working in communities with other groups and agencies to provide support identified by residents, and support that's needed out in the communities, working together and collaborating. Torquay United is, of course, a sporting club, biggest in South Devon, and TUST would see itself working much more closely, I think, with the local sporting community. I don't think I need to tell people here that sporting facilities in Torbay, where they exist, are often poor and need significant investment. Clubs have been now given 40-year leases by the council, so they can manage their own facilities and find funding to do that, to maintain and develop them where possible. A new Torbay Sport and Leisure Trust is being planned, which will aim to look after the interests of sporting clubs and organisations in the Bay, and I think that could be quite an important development. This would act as an umbrella body for sport in the Bay and facilitate much more partnership working, helping clubs get funding from the likes of Sport England, and maybe sharing facilities and working together for the sporting good of the Bay. Don't underestimate the potential in the Bay to develop sporting activity, grassroots activity. Lots of people doing different sports these days, and lots of people keen to develop those things, of ideas and energy to develop those things. But it just needs a bit more coordination, a bit more support, and I think that we could see that coming. But I see TUST, I see Torquay United Football Club ahead of that, leading and inspiring and using its collective clout, if you like, to influence that. Could be a key player. So the sporting community, helping the sporting community, levering funds and developing activities for the benefit of the community. And don't forget the great power that sport has in terms of unifying people, improving their health and their well-being, and making people feel better about the place they live in and themselves. Other initiatives I would like to see personally, to see TUST pursue as a community-based club, would be to work closely with our Football in the Community scheme, which has been run very successfully for a number of years under Frank Prince and now Paul Devlin, and crucially engaging with the future generations of supporters. We need to engage the younger people and get them up to play more and get them involved. The work that's going on in the schools is great, and I think TUST need to give full backing to the Football in the Community scheme. Torquay United ladies, success story, doing brilliantly well, playing in Bovey Tracy for heaven's sake. Get them back into Torbay. Let's get some support. Get our supporters up there watching them and supporting them, but playing in the Bay. And whilst a lot of time and effort has been spent on developing Sealham training facilities for the club, in the longer term, training facilities based in Torbay, I think, are a must. The aim must be to maybe multi-purpose all-weather pitches which can be shared, an income generation opportunity, but also a great benefit to the club in the longer term as well. These are the things we need to be thinking about as a community-based club. I also said community-owned club with a small set of staff, which we talked about, providing leadership, expertise, knowledge, and key strategic and financial direction, fully supported by the governing board and subcommittees and all that governance stuff. But this structure, I think, would be underpinned by a yellow army of volunteers, people out in the community working as ambassadors for the club, doing things for us in a whole range of interesting opportunities that could be, not just on match day, but every day of the week, out there in the community, spreading the gospel, talking about Torquay United Football Club, and feeling a pride in and working for them as a volunteer. As I said, volunteering can be terrific fun, but we would, if we were to run the club effectively, need hundreds of volunteers. And I see every TUST member as being potentially a volunteer, helping the club in some way, not just with financial contributions, but a range of other, using their skills, knowledge, and pursuing their interest as well. So finally then, in order to be a successful community-owned club, we need to believe that we can work together. Inclusion and clarity of purpose is essential for any football club. And when that football club is community-owned, the determination to make democracy work effectively is an added commitment. It's all about sharing, being open and transparent. We need to commit to success. Football clubs aim to complete successfully. And in our community, all our community work, we must aim to give the people we work with the belief that we and they are winners, and that together we can succeed. Everybody's a winner working for TUST, everybody's a winner as a volunteer, and everybody involved with the club can be a winner, not just on the field but off it. That's my message today. Hopefully you'll support that going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. That was really interesting in terms of what is actually happening in the Bay and what could happen. I guess if I was trying to summarise that is really Torquay United. I mean, that's what this is all about, Torquay United. Right, we've gone on longer than I wanted in the presentation, so really, been bored rigid by our PowerPoints and talking. It's your chance to fire whatever you want, discuss, fire questions, make points, have a discussion between yourself in terms of what you've heard tonight and whether you think it's worth exploring. Oh, we were going home now. There we go. Oh. Right. So I've been told I've got to put my microphone on. Sorry. That's great. You'll hear me. We won't hear you, but I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry, the lady in the green, I think, wanted to... Did you want to say something, lady in the green? No? I saw a hand fly up. Oh.
There's a number.
Go ahead. Lady down there. Well, yeah, sorry, there's a guy here, sorry.
My immediate reaction to the proceedings tonight, though, is the fact that, quite frankly, I'm not much wiser, because what is the quantum of the challenge that faces everybody financially? What is it that the trust is asking us to do?
Yeah. Well, my work is sort of, I mean, it is theory, but it is reality as well. To just kind of really explain where we've been involved in these types of opportunities, where it's maybe not quite been directors of clubs being locked up and the club's going to shut down tomorrow. You know, this is an opportunity, but this is how we've approached it with the likes of Portsmouth and Wrexham. It's really, we're at the first stage, and we can move beyond that, but it's really just having a night like tonight and more conversations to understand whether there's appetite really to explore support ownership and community ownership. What the model is, what the pros are, what the cons are, whether it's something that's exciting or whether it's something that, to be honest, you know, let's let someone else deal with this problem and, you know, let's just stick to being supporters. So really we're at stage one. Now, you know, the next stage really is to go in, have someone to work with Kelvin and Thea and the club, look at the liabilities and look at just exactly what the opportunity is. You know, is it an opportunity or is it a massive liability? You know, from what I'm hearing and from experiences of working with some of the other clubs, you know, it's a much better place than how some of these others have come into being. I mean, to give an example, Wrexham were losing over £1 million a year the season that the trust took over. Wickham Wanderers, very similar. Steve Hayes was great as a benefactor, but they were contracted liabilities and they were losing money of over £1 million a year. So that was the extent of the business they had to turn around. Now, that piece of work hasn't really been done yet, but that would be the next thing to do straight away, is to get one of the consultants that works for us to go in and basically do a financial assessment of the club. I don't think there's going to be any huge skeletons, but clearly we need to know what actually the opportunity looks like. But really, you know, that's what today is first, is to just give a bit more information about it, what it is and how appealing it is really, and get some discussion going. The next step would be, if we've kind of got a consensus to move forward, would be to really look at the opportunity. Following on from that, then it's, you know, is it not just something that everyone is interested in wants? Can we realistically afford to do it? And, you know, what does a budget look like for the club over the other side once we're in ownership? You know, how much do we need to raise to meet these liabilities? What will the structure look like? And that comes with the way we do it is a share offer basically. And, you know, it's a warts and all. We bare our souls to say this is what it looks like, and if this is the club you want, then we need to raise X amount of money to make it happen, and there'll be a target figure in there, and there'll be a budget in there. And if ultimately we can't raise enough money and we can't do a deal for the community, then, you know, it's not worth doing, because, you know, we can't afford to run that business, and we can't afford to run it at the level we want to. So I do appreciate kind of, you know, where you're coming from in terms of you probably wanted to see a lot more of that detail. If it goes well tonight, I think there'll be a meeting very shortly after this one, once that piece of work's been done, to say this is what the opportunity looks like, you know, this is what we need, how much we need to raise, and if we don't raise it, you know, we're going to have to try and find someone else to take on the club. So hopefully that explains a little bit.
I think Christian is absolutely fair. The trouble is with consultation is when you do consultation. You do consultation when you've got a plan in place and there it is, there's a plan. This is the first of our conversations with people. Is it worth exploring? If we get a positive response tonight, what we'll do, and it'd be your money, TUST money, what we'll be doing is we'll be commissioning Supporters Direct to do some more work. We met Kelvin. One of us has got to phone Kelvin tomorrow with the outcome of the meeting. There's a board meeting tomorrow, and obviously some of the directors are here today. If there is a positive response, Kelvin has indicated that he will provide us with the financial information. We'll commission Supporters Direct. They will use their financial people. It won't be a full diligence test. That would cost us 40,000. It will cost us 1,500 quid plus VAT to look through the books and give us a report. We'll also be commissioning Supporters Direct. Cost us, you know, about £3,000, so about £4,500, £5,000 worth of expenditure to see if we can take this forward to the next step. Then we'll be able to answer your question. I don't know. I haven't seen the financial information. So, but it is very early days yet. Right, you know, sorry, can I have the red jumper? Bob, hi Bob.
Non-council board. What I'm not clear on, and perhaps everybody else is, I'm not, how does this idea in principle sit with the president of Torquay United Football Club and his directors? You know, are they for it, are they don't want it, or I'm not clear on that at all.
Yeah, well, we've only had, again, the discussions we've had. Well, sorry, let's start again. I hope I'm not giving away any confidence here. I'm certain I'm not. I think the discussion we have with Kelvin, Fear's idea would be somebody incredibly rich, absolutely committed to the club, walks through the door and says, I'll take it over, I've got shed loads of money. I guess we would be happy with that. I think the suspicion is that's unlikely, and a few people around, I think the phrase is used, is kicking the tyres to see whether they're interested. Whether anything comes of that, I don't know. The sense I got from Kelvin is that he felt this was definitely an idea worth exploring, and as I said, if we get a positive response tonight, he has said to us that he will issue the information, financial information, that we can then look at it a bit further. Now, maybe that feels to me like a little bit of a vote of confidence in us. That's what it feels like. How would we work with the board? To be honest, every discussion we've had, well, I can't say every discussion, Simon and Bill have been very supportive of the idea in principle, but like everybody else, you know, it's got to be more than a principle. We've got to see the facts, and that's where we move to next. From my perspective, and I'm sure from my colleagues, what this is about, as I keep saying, is what's in the best interest of the club. And if something comes forward that looks a much better prospect than us, my view, I'd be saying to my colleagues, we ought to step aside, because there's something much better. But the thing that worries me is, what about if I'm sitting there on Boxing Day without a game to go to, and our club is really struggling because we haven't done anything? So all we're really trying to do is create another option. So does that answer the question? And just one other thing. I'm assuming everybody who wants to get involved in this, including existing board members, we're all here for the interest of the club. We're about building a coalition of a shared agenda.
We want to get involved.
Yeah, it's because that's all this is about. So, if the board, my view, Simon actually is a TUST member, and that is fantastic from our perspective, because he's got a huge amount of information that is really useful to us if we go forward.
Thanks very much, thank you.
Who's next? Sorry.
Hi, yes. You mentioned about support community-owned football clubs, and you talk about the model. Do you actually not think that's a bankrupt model? The clubs you're talking about there, yourself at Exeter have lots of issues this year. PFA loans, Kidderminster Harriers, currently unable to pay their wages for their staff. Some of the clubs you have up there are struggling quite openly to be able to function as a business. Do you think, going forward, Torquay United could use the same model? I know you say every club's different, but it's from the same principles. Do you think Torquay United could sustain that model going forward when quite openly it seems to be failing at this moment?
It might help to sort of just be clear on which clubs, maybe I'll go back to that slide, just to talk through the clubs. I think there is a bit of confusion about which clubs are actually supporter owned, and you know, and what stage the supporters have got involved. So, in terms of have supporter-owned clubs ever got into financial trouble? Yeah, of course they have. Have they gone from being supporter-owned and back to private ownership? Yes, and you know, famously, I suppose, 5-6 years ago, we had Stockport County and Notts County, where the members of Notts County Sports Trust voted to basically sell the club to an investor that, in the end, didn't appear to exist. So, you know, I'm not really going to cover that up, but their members chose to vote, or at least some of them chose to vote in that way. Stockport County again. You know, if you look at it in the round, that club used to own its ground. When the trust took over, suddenly they were paying about £500,000 rent just to play at their ground. And a lot of the clubs, particularly 5, 6, 7 years ago, took over their clubs when they'd lost their ground or they had a lot of debt to sort out. So, not making excuses for them, but actually a lot of them saw what they did as a success, just to keep the club going, even if it's a short-term capacity. In terms of the clubs now, I mean, Kidderminster aren't supporter owned, so I'm not. They've got a supporter director on the board. These are the ones that are supporter owned. I mean, you know, Wickham. So the trusts have been in there for 3 years or so. Again, they, you know, it's nothing hidden really that they've struggled, but again, they've come into the club with an owner who was running at over £1 million loss, as I said. They've lost Wasps, an anchor tenant who provided a lot of income for them, and one way or another, they're still there, and you know, the club's still running, and it's running at a loss. But I'm involved with a share off with them at the moment, and their aspiration is to obviously turn that loss into a profit as soon as they can. Wimbledon, Telford have always run break even. It's a struggle, don't get me wrong, but it's not like they've been making big profits, but they've run at break even. Wrexham, they took over in November 2011. They went in with about £700,000 in working capital that the supporters have raised over the years. The club was losing over £1 million the season before last, so again they have to change that. And this season, I think I mentioned that they're actually going to turn a profit for the first time. Portsmouth is a bit of an odd one, but they have managed to pay off £5 million of debt this year, and they're going to be with a small profit this year. So personally, I think as a general rule, these guys are doing an amazing job. There's a few that whether the community hasn't embraced the model or it's just too big a problem, they haven't made it. But their aspiration is certainly to run a sustainable club. I mean, maybe Martin might want to talk about Exeter, and you know, it was quite a public issue they had. It's probably best to speak about it, but you know, it's still going, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything in the trust model that stops you having ups and downs that come from football and football finances. But I think so. We had to manage a situation which was more about cash flow than actual basic funding. So having the cash at the right time of year. You know, we had to manage that. But the other side of that is we took a decision when we took over ownership of the club, and we were in the conference and we lost all the money for an academy and things like that. We took the decision that we were in it for the long term, and that we wanted an academy, and that we would give that a priority within the football club, which actually meant, you know, for times money going to that and not necessarily to the first team. Our financial situation this year has been transformed by the sale of one player from that academy to the Premier League. He made his debut in the Premier League for Swansea on Saturday. And so, although you could say, yes, in September we had to take a short-term loan from the PFA. A few months later, another financial decision that we've taken as a club has brought us in, you know, at the high end of heading towards £2 million. So I think you have to look at the big picture on this. There will be swings and roundabouts, but I don't think it shows the idea is bust. I think actually it shows that investing in the future, investing in the long term, will give you more stability than you think.
But sorry, the blunt truth is, Steve, it's an incredibly important question, and then it goes back to, well, you sit there with your flip chart and what are the other options? You know, as I said before, at one end, you know, somebody with very deep pockets, or at our end, the community ownership. There may be other options out there. We don't know. But if we don't at least prepare ourselves, we might be left with, I don't know, who knows?
Like that.
Well, I'm sure.
I lost this line suggesting you don't go into law every hour. I was just really stating that, especially the Exeter City, I earn every respect for coming up and talking to us tonight, by the way, for saying the great nature of a community-owned football club. I've no doubt about that, but I just think it's important to know the pitfalls of also community-owned football clubs is absolutely massive, which is something you're going through. You said the Kidderminster student fans, well, actually it's some fans, and they are currently unable to pay the wage.
Yeah, no,
So actually, I think you've got to look at the whole aspect. You know, I've been particularly very interested in everything we've got to say, but I would just like a few more fine lines. I'm going to be interested in that.
No, you're absolutely right. And you know, I've been in crowds, football crowds, and the yell is, you know, directors get your checkbook out. Well, they won't be able to do that. It will be what the membership going to do to resolve the issues, whatever those issues are, and it's going to be tough.
Can I have a
Yeah.
Well, I've got to stand up because I can't talk. Stand down.
As well. It's not decent forward, is it?
I didn't know how many people were in here. No, I know. But two things have come out of this meeting.
Yeah.
Number one is it is a business, and two, it is sporting. Now, for my sins, I live in Exeter. And he lives in Plymouth, and you can admit it. Now, would I say to everybody here, if everybody could bring in 2 people, that would solve some of our financial business. Plus, because it is people that come to the turnstile that make the money for the club. You can have as many sponsors as you'd like, but there's a numbers of the people, public that come in. So everybody is here can bring in 2 instead of coming on the road. I would say they would get some of the finances right. Now, as far as the sporting side is concerned, and one thing I will admit, I hate my Exeter City supporters, and it breaks my heart to say it, is that they stuck by the management. Because he's the finest bloke that ever walked on this earth, apart from was one that's in Manchester, and he was the most ignorant man you could ever come across, but you have money to back him up. But what I'm going to say is this: the business side of it is looked after by these members here. The sporting side comes about results on the field. And that comes back to the current board of directors who are given the management the say of what goes on the field. But what I'm going to say is that the management, and I'm coming to the end of it, the management, the board of directors, they've got to get the brain into gear before they appoint somebody to look after their affairs on the booth, because it's a result that bring in 4,000 gate to Torquay, it brings in less than 2,000. So business and sport. That's when I forget the sports side.
There's no doubt about it, it is both business and sport. I think everybody agrees. I'm going to try and go sweep across the room, so start there and then we'll go across.
Hi. What I wanted to say was a lot of for this model to work, a lot of the talk has been about in the Bay. Now, I don't come from Torbay. I'm unfortunately from over the border in Plymouth. I've lived in Scursford for 13 years. My son plays for the Exeter Academy. And, my point is, you've got to look wider than just Torbay. You've got to look at the whole of Devon, and you've got to, what Martin said earlier on was very important, you've got to look past the actual fans, you've got to look at the community. People aren't interested in football to get that message out there. Because it's much wider than just the fans that are going if you're going to make it work. And else you're going to get this Devon apathy, which is very difficult. Unless there's actually a cause that you're going for, it's very difficult. You haven't got an actual goal, like, the club's going to go bust tomorrow. Then people may become behind it, but it's harder if you haven't got an actual, thing you're fighting for, I think.
No, I totally agree with you. It's got to be broader than just Torbay, and we're very conscious. I mean, I think as Exeter have done is to bring on the exiles, if I can use that.
There's loads of people all across the whole of Devon, I'm sure, will be interested.
Okay, I'm going to sweep across because there are loads of people waiting. We'll go around. I'll go around. Oh, you already spoke once.
Sorry.
Oh, was it? Okay. Sorry.
Well, surely, I'm sitting here listening to you, but surely the first thing here is to own your own ground, isn't it? To me, you own the lease of the property.
Well,
that's the biggest
one option.
The burden is owning your own property, and believe you me, you know me and my sport, the council give you nothing. Well, nothing. The gentleman there, MP there, he could do some tricks. Here's the line. Surely no, we ought to start from the bottom, on the ground.
Well, as I said at the start, it's already the ground is registered as an asset of community value, and again, that if we start,
but you still don't own it.
No, but we're not going to be. We're only just starting on this journey.
Or would have had Maidstone owners, and then you'd have had Robertson, and the ground would be sold, and it would be in a swamp down in the Bunny seafront. We wouldn't be talking about taking over Plainmore now, would we? Let the council own it and rent it at a reasonable rate.
And let's focus not on about ownership. Let's focus on outcomes. Let's focus on partnerships, because the council wants what we want. I'm sure the MP MP's. I see him standing on the pop side, so he definitely wants what we want. Darren's here from the council. You're off to
my argument is, what does the council give you? Nothing. Like my sport, nothing.
Well, I'll just add something maybe a bit more impartial. but and I'm not saying this is reflective of Torquay United, but my experiences working with different clubs and go around the country is often that relationship is broken between a council and a football club, and often it's because if the council does own the facilities, and there's a lot of people complaining and being kept and various things, but the only time the council might ever hear from a football club is when they haven't paid the rent, or it's such a negative position, and it's interesting what you say about owning the ground. I think it's in some ways it might have been a godsend that the council does own the ground in terms of the fact that it's still there, and it's you're not in Oxford United.
It's Goldstone ground and what happened there? I saw that.
I mean,
up north.
Yeah, but equally there is a point where actually, and it's funny in a sense, because I've seen it at Wrexham, because Glendia University owned it.
You tried spine up the ladder can go. If that was me, I'll first of all put solar panels on the roof for Feedall, Plainmore and Everton. That's the end, but the water butts up there. If you come on off the fact that often lose your sake and price of water.
And
things like that.
And I think you can have these sort of conversations if you've got a real good partnership where the two can trust each other.
What I say the pension you're enough.
I'm really desperate. I obviously need a lesson in chairing skills. I'm just going to sneak round here and pick up in a circle. So I'm going to stick to it. Otherwise, people will put their hand. I'll come back to you. I promise.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea that you explore every opportunity. But you mentioned the word coalition. With a membership of only 200, we're talking about Exeter with 3,000, Wrexham with 4,000. You know, the numbers at the moment won't stack up. Maybe we should be looking at the areas that let's explore the opportunities, but work with the current board or those members who maybe wanted to do something as a partner.
Yeah.
You know, realistically, with a membership of 200, we're not going to get up to 3,000.
Well, let me give you a couple of examples. I know I sound like I should be Welsh because just Wrexham does strike me as there's a lot of comparables. I think when Wrexham took over, when the Supporters Trust took over that club, they had about 500 members, and now they've got 3,900 and something. And that's despite really that trust was very active and very vocal. They had a lot of issues with owners and saving the racecourse and things. But still, you know, even at the point when they took over, that was still the numbers they had. And I really do believe that there'll be a load of people that haven't come tonight that care about the club. They just haven't necessarily joined the trust, and they might not have joined it because for various reasons. But as soon as you twist what it's all about, it's about owning a club. You know, the potential for your membership growth is actually huge. It is what it. You want to be getting more people as members than are turning up for an average home game. That's what a lot of the clubs, even small clubs, have managed to do, and that's the point really about being relevant to the community beyond just the supporters that turn up. So I do take your point because, but equally, 2 months ago there was probably 100 members. So, it would be nice to have $500,000 in the bank to go off from as well, to be honest, but we haven't got that. But I think the opportunity is still nicely set up. We've just got to basically get the message out and see if more people are interested in it. Because I think you'll see that there'll be a lot of people that would join if we got that opportunity. But at the moment, it's a different offer, really, isn't it? Join the Supporters Trust or be a part owner of the club.
But we have to face reality. If there isn't an appetite in Torbay, South Devon, the Exiles, this will go nowhere. We've had a nice evening, nice chat, but it won't go anywhere. But it isn't going to be down to 3 or 4 people up this end. It's going to be down to all of us going out and getting that message across. Go down. Nobody down there? Oh, there was a lady down there, I'm sure that wanted to speak.
Well, yes, I was originally.
Right.
I was really going to ask Martin what the day-to-day structure looks like in terms of making decisions, big decisions. What the board, what does it look like?
Yeah. If you remember, what I said was that the trust owns the club, it doesn't run it. So there are 2 different boards. There's the trust itself, and we have to run, we're a community benefit society, so we have to run, like any cooperative organisation, we have to run our own affairs, recruiting new members, dealing with the finances, deciding what we're going to prioritise. So we have a trust board. I'm a member of the Exeter Trust Board. But then we also have a club board, and the club is a company which we're the majority shareholder. And in fact, we had a bit of a change in the summer. The current model we've got at Exeter is a club board of 8, of which 4 are trust directors and 4 are other directors for their particular skills and expertise. So we've got a board of 8, of which half are trust directors. So that's the current model. It doesn't have to be that model. There's all sorts of different models, but that's the model we've got at the moment. And it's the club board that oversee the running of the club and employ the staff that run the club.
And are any of those directors direct charities that were originally with the club, historically?
It's historically probably none of the four are, no. But you have to remember that the period before we took over was.
It does.
If you were involved in that, I mean, those were the days of Uri Geller and Michael Jackson and others. So you probably wouldn't want to have been a director then if you wanted to get on. But we've got people who are financial expertise. We've got lawyers, football people. And people that are leading on things like the redevelopment of the ground. So we've got, those kind of experts.
I was curious about the company, because you said the company sort of owns the club. And
the trust owns the company.
Owns the company?
Yeah.
Well, all the shares in the company?
We own, I think something like 65%.
So who owns the other 35%?
Individual shareholders, and what we're finding is a lot of people that are long since dead. I mean, we've got people who bought a share in things like 1904 when Exeter City started off, and they're still a shareholder according to the records. So we probably own even a bigger percentage of the actual shares. It's one of the things we're looking at.
So we own the ground?
We don't. Interestingly, I was very interested in your discussion. The City Council own the ground, and at the moment, our feeling is we're pretty happy with that because it means predators can't get hold of it. We come from a situation where a building company bought the ground and were planning to build houses on it without any second plan. So that's our history. We were pretty glad that the council bought it off the building company and it's in public hands.
Does anybody here?
Well, first, thank you very much for arranging tonight, because I think we've all appreciated what you've said. I'm not here as an MP, I'm not here as a candidate. I'm here because my dad took me to Playmore as a 4-year-old, and I haven't yet worked out how to stop going. This has been really interesting. But one thing I do worry about, one of the reasons I do go, and I think the reason we all go, is we have hope. We have hope that we're going to win. We have hope we're going to move up. We have hope we're going to get promotion. We even have in our wildest dreams that we might one day get into the Championship, even the Premiership. We might even have this wild dream of playing Real Madrid in the Champions League Cup final.
4 years old.
It is that hope that keeps us going. And whatever we do, we've got to keep hope alive, that we're going up, that we're not just saving something in aspect. We're in a museum. We don't want the club to be in a museum. We want the club to grow and succeed. So I think with that in mind, we need to explore everything and move forward.
Great, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Just going back to what the chap said about, obviously, members. You said you've got 200 members. I think I've counted 64 people in this night. Was Western members. I'm not a member. I'm talking United season ticket holder. I'm also a sponsor. I am talking like Matt. Anybody that knows me, I know a few people here do. My car, I've got a Jaguar Estate, yellow and blue. My concern, obviously, is for Torquay United Football Club. I come from Plymouth. I'm a businessman. Yes, it is all about football, but it is a business. And to survive, it needs to make money to survive. Because if not, you just close your doors and council go back and end up Sainsbury's, Morrison's, or whatever. And there's 2,100 people attend on Saturday, or 1,600 Tuesday night. Where are they?
It's the wrong place to hold it here.
And also, when you open your programme, I'm not being funny, but you open your programme, and a lot of people saying players heads down. There's a lot of players that haven't got sponsored this season, and that to me is disgraceful. They're going to go out, they're going to wear their shirts, and they've got nobody's name underneath, they've not had any money from it. What do they feel? Yes, I sponsored Chrissy Hargreaves' car, I sponsor League this season. Come on, stick your hand in your pocket, get your money out, and don't just go on, yeah. Do it, don't just say it. It's, you do need your players to also feel like they have got some support. I don't know what anybody else feels like. There's been a lot of booing going on this season. Okay, they haven't been brilliant.
which may be an understatement. Do you know what I mean? It's a team game. There's a lot of players going out there, and do you know what I mean? But also the club, the trust. You know, it's, I don't know. Maybe on a Saturday, hold a ballot. You know, have a ballot from the fans. Have it there, and you know, do you want this? Do you not want this? Do you want to stick with this? You know, Thea has been absolutely brilliant. You know, Simon Baker, top man. You know, they've all been brilliant. But we do. I think we need to do something now. You know,
That's a really important point. So, and I keep coming back to the point. Most supporters trusts galvanise around a crisis. We're not in a crisis. We've got a great club. We've got people who are there now committed to the club. Yeah. We could be talking about a very orderly.
You need those 2,000 fans behind you, giving you their £2 a month, or whatever. You can't run on 200. I run a business myself, and you know I work 14 hours a day sometimes. And it's all about bringing the money in to keep that business going, and to sponsor my football club, to pay for my season ticket. You know, and do you know what I mean?
Can Martin just because Exeter would have gone through the same challenge.
It's really interesting hearing the references to 200 because that was exactly the size of our trust when we started to discuss, exactly as you are, the ownership and what transformed it. And in a sense, it doesn't matter whether there's a crisis or not. The question is wanting to move to the ownership of the club. That then suddenly brought in so many more people, and we went from being 200 to 2,000.
And we fans are, won't you?
Exactly, and that wider family of fans.
Why don't we next Saturday stick a big sign up, Morrison's here soon, and then see what the fans are saying. Oh dear, you know, we're going to lose our football club, and then let's see what happens. You know, I don't know.
Well, I guess we could engineer a crisis. Sorry, you've been patient.
Thank you. Kind of to the point that you're making, that there's a difference in relationship at the moment, isn't there, between fan and club, because we're customers at the moment, and so it's a sort of market, isn't it? So the teams do dreadfully, so there are going to be less people going, there are going to be less people buying merchandise, and less people sponsoring players.
But that was at the start of the season, a lack of sponsorship.
We've just been relegated to non-league football, but
let's finish it, please.
There's a you know, the relationships is that at the moment. It's a market relationship. We're supporters, but essentially we're customers. We pay our money, and if we don't want to go, if we don't like what we're buying, we don't go, and we don't pay. And there'll be some saying not being more, but that's irrelevant really to this, because the relationship will change if we decide that we want to become owners. It's a completely different mindset. It's a completely different relationship between you and your club, because you're something different. We can talk about lots of reasons why it won't work. There's only 200 members, or there's not enough money that they'll have. What's going to galvanise fans, I suppose, or maybe I'm being naive, is the prospect of owning your club is going to be a far more galvanising recruitment mechanism than saying, well, actually, we could own a few shares as a coalition partner with a board in the club. The prospect of ownership, I think, is a much more galvanising aspect. It changes our relationship as supporters because we become owners, not just customers, where we can pick and choose whether we feel like it. A completely different mindset, I think.
Okay, go back round. There's two people who have already spoken. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken wants to say something?
I'm just reiterate back, if you want to galvanise, you've got to use the power of social media these days to get the message out as far as you possibly can, because things can go very viral very quickly. As soon as you get things out on the internet and social media,
No, that's really useful. I've learned a lot. I'm an IT moron, but these guys have taught me a huge amount in the last few weeks.
Is this available?
Oh, what, PowerPoint?
No, it's being video.
It was being, yes, I've probably got the wrong phrase. It's practically streaming it, whatever that means.
Streaming it there, we're videoing it here. Can you just repeat what people are saying, because...
Oh, sorry, yes. You did remind me and I've forgotten, sorry. The lady was saying we've got to use social media more effectively. So in terms of this, we are I think we're streaming it. It means people will be able to see it. We will put the presentations on the website. Excellent. So, but you're absolutely right. We will need to move around. Shall I go around? Because I've got people on speak second.
I was just going to say one thing very briefly. It covers what a lot of people say. Until you have a goal and a message, you're not going to get the membership you need. When you have that clear thing, like you want to own the club, then you can go out to communities, people, and galvanise thousands and thousands of people. But right now, you're not going to be able to do it because this is what this meeting's about, isn't it? Discussing what you do next.
Absolutely. And Robin's point was, we want you to have a vision from where we want to get to. It's not 5 people in a dark room. It's about everybody's vision. So you could, yeah, go ahead.
I support social media. Again, I'm not actually sort of based in a town called Ashford. Which anyone knows is in the middle of nowhere. It's about a 20-minute drive to Newton. And what I've noticed is there's no. Well, I've been on the website talking. There's never really a lot of connection with people that don't really live in the Bay. So if you don't live in the Bay, you don't really know what's going on with the club.
Right.
And where I am, right slap bang in the middle, so I'm equal distance from Plymouth, equal distance from Exeter, equal distance from Torquay. And people all pick their allegiances just on sort of who contacts them a bit more. Luckily for me, my old man did go for a youth in Torquay. I was, for a small amount of time, was going to, we didn't have any money, so I sort of fell into Torquay luckily. But we have facilities in Silhain, which I've never seen really been used. Everything that is run through Torquay is run through Plainmoor. Right. But if we could monopolise on Silhain and use social media a lot more, you could reach out to the middle part of Devon, which is right slap back in the middle. No one really cares about because Exeter is far over trying to deal with Exeter. They can't do a big city, they can deal with Exeter, they've got no support there. So Torquay's not big, so why don't we move in and monopolise on Central Devon? Because we have the facilities there. So we have the ability.
Chelsea set up an Ashburton.
Yeah, no. Again, I think Robin's point was very much, you're absolutely right. This has got to be bigger than just Torquay. We've got to reach out. Absolutely, really good point. Go on to Rick, coming back for a second.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody that's put all their effort into Torquay United Football Club over the years. You've done a magnificent job. And you remember, not so long ago, the enthusiasm FC United Manchester brought down.
Fantastic.
What makes them tick?
Yeah. Well, 1,500 fans on an away trip makes them tick.
Can be done.
Yeah. Steve, you...
yeah, thank you. Firstly, two Torquay United fans out there, for every respect for you lads, you're doing a great job, Robin, and yourself. I think you get the wrong message across when you say it's not a crisis. Personally, I'm going to go for the fact that I think we're going to get to a crisis. That's no disrespect to the gentlemen who are working there, but behind Tom. So I think that's a wrong message to get across if you're going to sell this. Also, I had the pleasure of sitting on the trust board, back in the Chris Roberts with Chris Lee, and he's poking himself down there at the height of the Chris down there, the height of the Chris Roberts problem, which was the most serious issue, I think, to ever hit this football club, and I'm not entirely sure we're that far away at this moment in time. I believe, Chris, you probably back me up on this, there's no more than 700 members of the trust. I know we're talking about numbers, and I know you have to go outside the box to be able to get in people, not just Torquay United people, but people around the country. The apathy, and that guy made a brilliant point though about Minigopus. 70, 80 people in here. There was a chat for 130 to be here tonight. It was all over, it was on the website. People knew about this meeting. Leaflets handed out on Saturday. We still couldn't even fill this room. Does that not worry you, gentlemen?
Yeah, it does worry us. But coming back to the same thing, what do we do? Do we just sit here passively, or do we proactively try and do something?
I'm not suggesting it's going to be proactive. I'm not suggesting. I understand. I've just made the first point I made is we're a brilliant job you're doing that. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying, even at its very height, we could not have got enough people to be even to gain a position on the board. Even at its very height with Chris Roberts. Just how you need to bear that in mind.
Yeah, no, and again, you know, those kind of risks and challenges, I think we understand those. And I keep saying, if there isn't the will to move this forward, we have to give up.
Oh, there is, by the way.
And I just add, because I've got the pleasure of sitting in many pubs around the country talking to football fans, and I've honestly been in a room where there's been more non-league fans at a small club playing down at step 4 or 5 than say at Newcastle United, big social club. There'd be 50 supporters there, and there'd be 120 at Banbury United, and you know, the apathy is the killer, and you know that comes from the really like the history, I suppose, of what's happened at the club often. And you know, you've been very fortunate that you've had someone who's taken care of finances of the club and done lots of things. But you know, this isn't in any way a disrespectful comment on that, but I've also spoken to directors and people in a similar position as that who said, I've ended up being my own worst enemy here because I've put so much in that people step back and they can sit back and just be spectators. Now, I think we've got to change that mindset. I think you can do it without a crisis, but I do take your point that there's going to be a change of ownership at your club. It needs to happen very quickly, or there's going to be a crisis. Now, I think we can make that a positive message that does your community, do your supporters exactly want to own this club? Because if you do, now is the time to step up. And if people want to step up, then we will come back with another meeting with loads more information to say this is what it looks like. But you know, it would be wrong to just do that straight away.
Can I just check? I promised we'd finish at 9. I've got hands keep buzzing up. It's 5 to 9. I don't know where the museum. What time do they want us out by? 9. Okay. Well, I've got about 6 hands. We really would like to give you a sense of. Well, we'd like a sense of what you'd like us to do, because we're going to be spending TUST money. And also just give you an indication of what's going to happen next. Who's got a really burning point? Right, what 3 burning points? 5, 6, 5 burning points. Can it be really short and sharp?
Yeah, the gentleman there said about on Saturday, if you want to take a vote of what people in here think, rather than doing with 64 people, do it at the ground on Saturday, and then say, look, and then we want some figures, some finances of where you're going to go with it, and then people can say, that saves, you know.
I don't think that's appropriate because they haven't attended this meeting. They don't know the.
Why are they not here? Can I just ask why they're not here? Why are they not here?
Well, let's go with what we've got.
Well, yeah.
They should all be here.
Let them make the decision.
Okay, but we can't talk in terms of why people aren't here. There might be all sorts of reasons. But can we write quick points? Chris, you have a point of thinking?
Yeah, 4,500 plus VAT for the audit. Is it in the coffers?
I think it is. Yes, I've been advised by my IT expert and treasurer and everything else that we got the money.
Well, the audit's only 1,500 quid.
Yeah, the financial.
So you get the whole flow diagram with the arrows.
Yeah.
I want to see what happens at the end, where you work.
Right. What's the
give it back, possibly.
Yeah. The flow diagram.
Sorry.
Yeah. Why don't we get the flow diagram? We just try and whip through some more questions. We'll get the flow diagram.
Next time, I think you should.
I just think one of the main points is that the board, I'm talking, you've got to be open and honest with the supporters. Keep them informed as to where we are.
Well, as I said to you, Kelvin has appeared to me incredibly open, very positive, and agreed that if we get a mandate, as informal as it is, that they will share the financial information with us. We won't. The other thing I must stress, he has asked that we do sign a confidentiality agreement, so that it's very limited to a few number of people who can actually see it. But my perception is that he does want to be open and work with us. So Nigel.
Yeah. Just a pointer with regard to the ownership of the ground. There was a covenant set by the Carey estate to the then Torquay Borough Council, which stated that land was only to be used for recreational purposes, which Torquay United and its sporting objectives are all part of. So I don't think we're ever going to see a Morrison's or like on that side, hopefully. And secondly, Player of the Year vote, which is a contentious subject this season.
Right.
Do we have the vote on Saturday, when we'll have a bigger gate than what we will against Lincoln next Tuesday?
Can I give an opinion on voting? Do you mean, no, I'm not going to vote on your fair year, but no, just in terms of, I do take the point that we need more people to be talking about this stuff and saying yeah or no or whatever, but really, you know, the problem is we can't really have like a legally binding vote with a public open meeting. Really, all that we're doing at the moment is committing to say, probably, yeah, I think there's something in it. I want these guys to explore and take it a bit further. And we're not remortgaging our houses, we're not going back and having a difficult conversation with our partners about how to sell this, that, or that's another few months down the line. But at the moment, we're just saying, do we want to explore this as an opportunity? If yes, then what will happen is our guy will come in and speak to Kelvin and some of the guys at the club and try and do a kind of high-level summary, financial summary of the situation at the club, provide a report which can then be used, and you know, we'll have to be careful obviously about what figures can and can't be released, but ultimately we need to know what we might be buying, and that will be another big public meeting where, you know, all this, no disrespect to the museum, which is fabulous, we want a bigger venue, we want loads of people there, we want to basically bear our soul and say this is what we need to raise, this is what it looks like on the other side, and if you want to go ahead, then it's not about sticking your hand up in the air, it's basically about raising the money to meet that target, because if ultimately we can't raise the money, we can't go ahead. So, you know, I know it's difficult, and particularly when we're preaching democracy and we can't have a proper vote about it, but it's really hard to do at this stage. So it's for me, it's really saying, do you want these guys to put more time and effort in? Do you want me and some of the other guys to put more time and effort in, and also a little amount of money to be paid to make it happen?
So
that's it.
Can I just ask, is what we're asking is, are we prepared to commit £1,800 that we already have in the
No, it's going to be, yeah, it'll be more than that, because also we'll commission Sports Direct. It could be up to £4,500.
So, yeah, the review, I should say, I mean, you probably charge tens of thousands to do this, but a guy does it for us because he likes to do, but he charges £1,500 plus VAT. He'll do the financial review. But then, really, you probably want to do the share offer.
Sorry, that would give people far more feel for whether we have a go at.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd say, John, is we've made a commitment to the club that we wouldn't widely spread that financial information. So we'd just be able to say, we've had a report and this tells us X, Y, whatever it tells us. So there is that kind of sensitivity.
I mean, just to say, I think because of the timescales, you would want to go and just pull the share offer together at the same time, or at least the makers of it, and have that presentation. I think, yeah, you know, obviously, you say I'm a beneficiary of it, it's subsidised our support, but you need to progress it to that stage, I think, with the timeline that you've got, either to go ahead and look at the makers of the share offers or not, would be my.
Okay, I just get a sense that people are starting to feel uncomfortable in seats. Right, burning points only.
Anybody that's ever run a football team or a club realises how impossible or difficult it is. But you will have to pull the 2,000 hardcore supporters before you start committing anybody. Otherwise, you're knocking your head against the wall.
I keep saying we might be.
If you can get to the ground and do a straw poll of some description,
yeah.
Most of the people here are hardcore supporters. Yeah. They may not be able to go all the time because they're away on holidays or something like that. Sure. But a lot of the people that are here are business people as well. They realise what it takes to run a business. Yeah. And that's what you're saying. That's what you're saying to every 2,000 people, 3,000 people. Now you have to commit yourself to a $5 a year, or $5 a month, a $10 a month, £20 a month.
Yeah, yeah. That's what being a fan owner means. Yeah, you're right.
Well, a lot of people are already season ticket holders. Like, not saying everybody is, because everybody can't afford it.
You might have to be a member and also pay to see the games.
Yeah, I should think if we had it up talking I did, we'll make money, because everybody needs a drink now.
Yeah. Well, there's a story behind that. I won't go into that one. Okay, if nobody has got a burning question. Oh, one more.
Sorry, it's just because the point you make is 60 people here, or whatever it is, but there are actually 200. It's not a lot, but 200. So there are 200 people who have bothered to join the TUST, who have bothered to pay their £24 a year. So even though they're not all here, that does indicate there are more people than in this room who care and are bothered about what's going to happen. And as we're canvassing an entire football ground, as to whether we go, it seems something practical. I suppose the obvious thing is you're asking about TUST money, and therefore essentially TUST members.
Yeah, you're right. 200. Okay, well I mean, just a sense. I mean, is there a show of hands?
Moving to the next steps as described by James.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to try and count those. Is there any people who are against? It's probably easier. Any against? Anybody abstaining? One abstention. Well, that's pretty.
I'm not a member.
Explanation later.
Okay. Very quickly, in terms of the way forward, tomorrow we'll advise Kelvin. I'm sure Simon and Bill will also advise Kelvin, because there is a board meeting in terms of what's happened. TUST will formally commission Supporters Direct to do the financial assessment. Kelvin has promised us the financial information, I think, by the end of this week if we move forward. We'll obviously have ongoing discussions with Torquay. We're going to have to launch fundraising. God knows what that looks like. We're going to have to do a load of thinking about that. The community share offer is probably the one that we'll pursue. We've got to, if this becomes reality, the other things we have to think about is satisfying the football authorities. I mean, all the stuff that I guess Andrew does, as part of his day job. We are going to have to. What's the test of gets them proper person or whatever it is?
Directors alone with the test.
Yeah.
You'll get in on it.
And the board and governance arrangements. There's a hell of a lot to do. A massive amount of business planning. A massive amount of strategic risk assessment. It's nobody should think this isn't going to be easy. But I think the sense is that we believe in this club and we want to make sure it survives. So I've got to say thank you to you for giving up your time and being patient with us for overrunning. I really want to thank our speakers, particularly James and Martin coming down to the Bear Pit Torquay United from Exeter. Just a few, please. If you still get your leaflet, there's some websites. Check out the Supporters Direct website. Loads of really good information on there, which hopefully will inspire you. Check on the TUST website, and also make sure you visit the Torquay United exhibition because it's absolutely fascinating. A couple of other things I've been asked to refer to is the museum on the Friday the 17th of April for the price of £7.50. Are showing a match, probably, they're having to say what the match is, we think it's probably the Blackpool match. So anybody wants to come down and they're showing it. But anyway, it's on 7:30 on Friday the 17th of April, they've asked me to advertise that. We've got some Exeter City stuff, if anybody wants it. There's some hard copies of the presentations if anybody wants it. I better let you go home. Thanks very much.
So it could be a gentleman